Coming up on this history edition of Cache Rendezvous, we're heading downstairs at the Merrill-Cazier Library.
This is home.
We'll tell you why Old Main is special to Aggies.
Like, everyone who is an Aggie is a part of the Aggie family, and I feel that when we sing the Scotsman.
We'll show you the history behind the song that defined what it means to be a Utah State Aggie.
I think it's important to know like a little bit about who your leader is as a person.
We'll show you why beauty isn't the only thing that gets you the crown in today's pageants.
It's in oblivion. It's gone.
You may have noticed the construction on Main Street. We'll show you where Logan began and where the city plans to take it.
All that and more, this is Cache Rendezvous from USU Special Collections.
Welcome to this history special of Cache Rendezvous. I'm Emma Fates.
And I'm Annika Johns. Today we are joining you from Special Collections in the basement of the Merrill-Cazier Library. Here at Special Collections, they say they store and preserve things they find important to local history and culture. Our team found most of our information from Special Collections online.
Now, before the digital age, curators used card archives like this one to organize their collections, like the Scotsman.
Kayla Peterson joins us to show us the history behind the crowd favorite song.
Thanks, Annika. So this booklet actually contains the Utah State fight song, Hail the Utah Aggies. But there's an even older song that most fans say have a deeper meaning to them. I learned about this song and it's sung at most sporting events, and the fact that it was written over 100 years ago.
Horns, sousaphones, and the occasional cowbell are a few of the instruments used to create the melody of one of Utah State University's beloved anthems.
So the Scotsman is kind of like, we have two different fight songs almost. The Scotsman is our unofficial fight song, but it's the more well-known and more celebrated fight song. It's more tradition. It is one of those things that has been around for Utah State forever. I mean, traditions have come and gone, but the Scotsman has stayed.
According to the USU archives, the Scotsman, originally titled The Scotchman, wasn't an original song created by the university. A similar song was published and used by Ohio Wesleyan University in 1906. Dakota Wesleyan University also used their own variation in 1917. USU's version of the song, however, was composed by a graduating student shortly after Ohio and Dakota Wesleyan University.
So the Scotsman, it was written by Ebenezer John Kirkham, which is my great-great-uncle, in 1918, and it was adopted almost immediately after, like the following year. The lyrics, some of them came from a folk tune of like the first part, just like an English folk tune, but then the second part was Ebenezer wrote them himself.
Kirkham made a few changes to his version of the song. Beyond the line change to a true-hearted Aggie from Utah, the most notable change was the addition of the word sagebrush at the end of the song.
There must have been a lot more significance between the rose and the thistle and the Scotsman and the Englishman back in the day. I think that we've probably lost a little bit of the context there, but I think that there is something to be said about the spot where the sagebrush grows and how passionate Aggies can be about where we live and, you know, Cache Valley and Utah in general and the state that we represent.
The Scotsman is heard at most USU sporting events and academic celebrations. However, that wasn't always the case.
When I came here as a student in '59, and then even when I came back to teach here in 1971, the Scotsman as we know it and do it at athletic events didn't exist.
Peterson says in the past that there was a group of students who had a jazz band calling themselves the Scotsmen. These students were charged with playing the song at different events.
I think it's right close to the turn of the century, this century, that it became part of every athletic event. And it just became part of what we are now.
According to the Utah Statesman, the Scotsman was revised in the 1980s by Professor Larry Smith, who wrote an arrangement for the USU band to play. keeping true to the original tune and lyrics. The arrangement Smith composed is the one Aggie fans sing at different games and ceremonies. Along with the changes, motions were added to go along with the song and the lyrics.
The hand signs were originated with the band. So I know that the band was originally the trombones would swing from one side to the other, and the student section started copying that, and then to copy the drum major, you'd go like this.
But other USU fans say the drum motion stemmed from the college's agricultural roots, looking more like you're trying to milk a cow than beat a drum.
I know people have always thought it was the milking, and it is. I mean, if you've ever milked a cow, that isn't how you do it.
The definition of being an Aggie means something different to each person.
To be an Aggie is to be someone who, first and foremost, is dedicated to their Aggie family. I think that the Aggie family is something that is very underrated, and I think that it is a real thing.
To be an Aggie is to be a part of the Aggie family. Like, everyone who is an Aggie is a part of the Aggie family, and I feel that when we sing the Scotsman.
So Kayla, what does the Scotsman mean to you?
The Scotsman to me means a lot. It's a family. Like was said, every time I sing it, I just feel a part of the Aggie family. And that's what it means to me, is a family that I'm a part of. Professor Peterson even said that he's going to be singing the Scotsman until he's 6 feet in the ground.
That's a little bit of a commitment. I mean, I'm an Aggie. I love my Aggies, but I don't know if I'll be singing it that long, but still, props to him. Love the Aggies. Old Main is pictured here in Special Collections, and as you can see, well, the start of the building is here, but it definitely looks a lot different than the Old Main that we know and love so well today. And Jake Ellis joins us to tell us just a little bit about why.
That's right, Emma. Things sure have changed a lot over the years at Utah State. But what I want to know is what you guys picture when you think of Old Main.
That is a good question, Jake. So I'm a huge fan of Aggie athletics. So every time the A turns blue, Old Main just pops into my head.
Yeah, and when I think of Old Main, I think of how much my calves burn to actually climb up the hill to get there.
Well, my roommate thinks they should install a gondola, but until they do that, I went a little deeper into the history and traditions that make Old Main so significant. Electronic bell chimes ring out from Old Main. These sounds from the West Tower have told people the time every 15 minutes for more than 100 years.
In 1904, when that started, that most people lived, pretty close to the university, or even, on dorms that were really close, within hearing of that bell. And so it would chime when classes started.
The Cache Valley icon didn't always look this way, and in fact wasn't planned to look like this. This architectural drawing from 1889 only has 3 towers and misses the prominent A displayed on the west tower. 3 different architects drafted the building in phases.
Old Main was built in actually 3 different stages, right? Started in 1889 and then to 1902, ending with the tower.
Old Main used to have a 2-story auditorium the university used as a lecture hall and chapel.
When I first came here, the big classes on campus were all taught in Old Main Auditorium.
It's been used for a lot of different things.
On December 19th, 1983, Peterson was in his office.
I was just on the 3rd floor grading, and the fire alarm went off.
A fire broke out on the then vacant 4th floor.
All I was thinking about is these kids, I had about 100 and some tests. And I said, we got to get these out of here because we got to get their grades.
Peterson safely evacuated the building, but regrets not trying to stop the flames himself.
We had not been trained, but down on the 3rd floor, there was literally a great big old fire hose inside a cabinet that if I'd have had brain A, we could have knocked that down and put the fire out.
Firefighters extinguished the blaze, but water from their hoses caused severe damage throughout the building. Old Main needed a major renovation.
Because, Old Main is on the National Register of Historic Places, they wanted to make it as close as accurate as possible as what it was already.
Part of the renovation included a new east tower.
That tower, they wanted to match as closely as possible with the other bricks. Colors change, and so they couldn't find kind of that color. And so, but then there was a building in Lehigh which had been demolished, and it was actually from the same time period, like the 1890s that it was built, and it was really similar. So they actually went and got those bricks and then built that East Tower.
Peterson says the construction was a burden on students.
Your generation of students has put up with COVID. That generation of students in the mid-'80s lived in chaos. You know, there's always construction.
The electronically lit A on the West Tower was a gift from the senior class of 1909. As day turns to night in Logan, the A shines. The blue celebrates an athletic victory. The lights on the tower are also a major part of the annual luminary. Incoming freshmen gather on the quad.
2 years ago, I stood here with thousands of my fellow Aggies as part of our Connections course. We held up these paper lanterns as part of the luminary, where we celebrated our first week here at the university and sang songs like the Scotsman. For many modern Aggies, it's the first tradition they experience here at Utah State.
The building on the top of the hill has been a gathering place for Cache Valley as well as USU students.
In the summertime, we have concerts every Sunday and open up Old Main, and I just think we need to have all the classrooms full to get as many students in here as you can.
Old Main has become a symbol of the university. It's featured on folders, graduation sashes, and souvenir frames.
If you could think of one thing about Cache Valley and one thing about Utah State, I think most people would think of Old Main.
Students and faculty say Old Main is part of what gives Utah State meaning.
I've had an office in here 48 years. This is home.
I think a lot of us can relate to Old Main feeling like home, or just USU in general.
Yeah, for sure. And with that renovation in the 80s and modern maintenance, I think Old Main's going to tower over Logan for many years to come.
For sure, I live just right down the street from Old Main. It's always nice to look outside, see the A lit up blue, you know, the Aggies getting a win. It's just a nice symbol of Aggie pride.
Utah State University released a land acknowledgement this year, saying that they recognize that their buildings are on native land. Now, there were many tribes that were acknowledged because the university is found across the state of Utah, but the first nation in Cache Valley is the Shoshone tribe.
Now, they have their own name for the valley. What do you think it is? Was it A, Valley of the Great White Buffalo, B, Valley of the Elk, C, Valley of the Great Spirit, or D, Valley of the Forgotten Spirits? Find out after the break.
There are 16 million children struggling with hunger in America. This is a serious problem, but one we can solve. Visit feedingamerica.org to help. Together we can solve hunger. Together we're feeding America.
And welcome back.
Now, we gave you a little time to think about what the Shoshone calls this valley, and if you guessed the Valley of the Great Spirit, then you were correct. Nathaniel Gillis joins us to tell us a little bit more about this history and just about the history of Main Street and Cache Valley.
You know, I think the fact that the valley was called the Valley of the Great Spirit is really cool. In my childhood, I know this is only a sketch, but I was told that once a great white buffalo appeared. It's the sign of the beginning of the end of times.
You know, I don't think I've ever seen a white buffalo.
Well, I definitely have. I saw one in Arizona, and I saw one where I'm from in Wyoming, so I'm a little scared.
Don't worry, I think it's all about peace. It's going to be a very peaceful thing, but I could be wrong. And that's not the only interesting thing about Cache Valley. With all of the construction going on downtown, I was curious about how Logan evolved over the ages, and I found a couple gems.
Cache Valley locals say the valley is known for its beauty, its hikes, Utah State University, and Logan's historic downtown. Recently, there's been a change to Logan's downtown. Mayor Holly Danes plans to revitalize the downtown area and to create an atmosphere that will be more inviting. Local historians say while it may be exciting to have new buildings, it is also important to look to the past.
So people need to understand that when the pioneers settled in Logan, which wasn't until the late 1850s, this was the land of the Shoshone.
The Shoshone referred to this area as the Valley of the Great Spirit. The tribe would hold healing ceremonies in the valley that would scare the pioneers when they first arrived. Historians say the pioneers calmed down when they realized the Shoshone were performing sacred rituals and ended up making the ritual spot a healing place of their own. Today, the Logan Temple stands where the Shoshone held their healing ceremonies. Pioneers forced the Shoshone out of the valley and made Logan a town, but historians say Logan became a city when the trolley came rolling in.
This is a pass that could get me onto that trolley. Local historian Darren Smith lended me this blank one and this one filled out. This pass could get me from Ogden, Utah to Preston, Idaho, and its rails ran right down Main Street. And one lifelong Loganite says it's a bumpy ride.
That was my first experience of motion sickness. The trolley got the names of the leaping leaner, the galloping goose, or the puddle jumper, because of its swaying back and forth and then bouncing up and down.
David Eccles, along with other businessmen, funded the trolley system, and workers began construction on October 19, 1909. Ted said his trip from Logan to Preston took about 4 hours. The trolley would bring mail or anything else people needed from town to town.
And in one case, they were carrying a corpse in a coffin. And as the train was bouncing around, the lid popped open and the corpse came up a little bit. And my dad turned around and looked at that, and if he'd have had a steering wheel, he'd have probably run right off the road.
Ted says in 1919, there were roughly 16 trains a day going back and forth from Ogden to Preston. But by 1946, it was down to 1 train a day. In December 1946, the city decided to end the railway because buses and cars were more convenient. Ted says the progress in Logan today is exciting, and he is glad to see more jobs in the valley. But he says change can be hard.
When you see that change, you say, well, gee, that's a chapter of my life now that is in oblivion. It's gone.
One of the changes Ted is talking about is the Emporium that recently came falling down.
Whoa, 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 whoa. Oh my God.
Logan City Mayor says this is all part of a plan to help revitalize downtown Logan.
It finally feels, after so much work, so much planning, again, we've had great cooperation from our city council, that finally there's action, and that's always exciting.
This is the beginning steps to Mayor Dane's promise to revitalize downtown. It has cost over $4 million, and the mayor says every little bit's worth it.
More restaurants, more activity. I mean, that stimulates all businesses. It really is kind of a rising tide floats all boats type mentality.
Logan City Mayor plans to have this dirt pit turned into a splash pad for the summer, live entertainment, and an ice rink that should be open by December of this year. The mayor says she wants to bring cherished memories to the people of Logan.
Ted from the story actually was able to drive the trolley when he was a young kid because his dad was the engineer on it.
That's crazy. I mean, my dad probably wouldn't even let me touch a car until I was like 15 years old to drive, so I cannot relate to that.
My dad, the minute I got my permit, made me drive all the way to my high school.
Wow. Yeah, my mom wanted me driving by the time I was 10, but I still remember the first time I actually drove, there were 4 cop cars behind me, and I was terrified the whole time.
These are copies of USU newspapers from 1916 to the 90s.
And as you can see, they've kind of adapted over the years, and Sarah Murphy joins us to talk a little bit more about how the sports section specifically has changed.
That's right, guys. So not only has it kind of had some visual adjustments over the years, but the writing style has also changed. If we take a look at a specific article like this one from 1934, you'll see that win or lose, writers will do things like call both teams wonderful. Or if the Aggies were taking on a particularly difficult team, they would encourage fans to not worry, but ensure them that the Aggies had a real chance to lick them. Now, the Aggies did not just stop licking their opponents in the 30s, but they've had some pretty memorable highlights over the years. Let's take a dive back into these highlights, starting in the 70s with one of USU's first volleyball teams. Here's a picture of what Aggie sports writers at the time called the Dream Team. In 1978, the Ag Gals beat the UCLA Bruins with their 27th win of the season, making them the first USU team to win a national champion title for men or women. They were the first team ever inducted into the USU Hall of Fame. Standout players with All-American honors were Sandy Lynn, Lucia Chuddy, and Annette Caudle. Caudle went on to win the Broderick Award, naming her the most outstanding player in the country that year. She was also inducted into both the USU and the State of Utah Hall of Fame. Looking ahead to our next highlight, let's fast forward a decade or so to 1996. Our Aggie football team took on the Utes in what was then known as Romney Stadium. And warning, the video quality might be a bit of a jump scare.
Burrell turns and hands off to Spate. Spate leans in for the score. Durbin, Spate, touchdown, Aggies.
This was the play that changed the game. Now, I know it's a little blurry. It might even be hard to tell who's who, so let's watch it again. After trailing behind the entire evening, number 1 running back Abu Wilson scored this touchdown in the final quarter, giving USU the lead 20-17. Fans were ecstatic at the end of the game when they stormed the field, as this was the Aggies' first win against the Utes in 8 years and the first win against them at home in 13. Now, that's USU against one Utah team. But let's move forward to another monumental game where the Aggies shut down a school a little farther south.
Still on his feet, 30, still on his feet, 35, still on his feet, 40, 45 and 50, 45 and 40, 35, 33-yard line. Kerwin Williams electrifies the crowd at Romney Stadium.
There it is again, Romney Stadium in 2010. It was BYU versus USU in Logan, and by the end of the game, Aggie fans were storming the field with plays like this from number 12 quarterback DeAndre Borrell. The Aggies came out on top 31-16, rushing 242 yards that night. This was USU's first win over the Cougars since 1993, putting their 17-year losing streak into the ground. But that wasn't the only standout win against BYU that decade.
Daryl Gerritsen rolls to his left, finds Hunter Sharp down the field, 72 yards. See you later, Utah State.
See you later is right. It's 2014 in Provo, Utah. The Aggies hadn't had a road win against BYU in 37 years. But with 3 touchdown passes in the first half like this one from quarterback Daryl Gerritsen to number 3 wide receiver Devontae Robinson, USU put an end to that dry spell. The final score was 35-20. For our final highlight of the day, we don't need to dig too far back into the archives. Just think back to 2 years ago and the sound of a buzzer.
Tied at 56. Merrill for the lead. He's got it!
A play that had everyone on their feet and that was talked about for weeks later. You'll blink and you might have missed it. Number 5 guard Sam Merrill hit a 3 in the final seconds of the game, giving the Aggies the win over San Diego State 59-56. Now, not only was this an upset win against the number 5 ranked Aztecs to win the Mountain West Conference tournament, but it guaranteed the Aggies a place in the NCAA tournament for the 2nd consecutive year. Well, it's pretty clear the Aggies have had some monumental highlights over the seasons, and it was kind of hard to choose, but those were just some of my personal favorites that I found.
You know, I was at the game last night, and I may have shed a couple tears when the seniors came out to play their last game.
I know it's kind of hard seeing those people finally finish out their seasons at USU, but it'll be cool to see where Aggie sports keeps going. Now, this is the skull of a bear people of Logan call Old Ephraim. A 1923 account by Frank Clark says he hunted Old Ephraim for 10 years. Clark says he finally killed the bear after coming face to face with it. His account says he shot Old Ephraim with all 6 rounds in his chamber before he fell dead. He says he was almost sorry to do it, calling the bear his Moby Dick.
Now, comparing a bear and a whale is kind of insane. So how big was this bear?
Well, we'll give you some hints. It was A, 13 feet, B, 9'11", C, 7.5", or D, 6 foot 5 inches tall. We'll show you the answer after the break.
I believe.
I believe that.
I believe that we.
I believe that we will make a difference.
We will treat everyone with respect.
We will stop violence of every kind on campus.
We will build each other up and not tear each other down.
We will know where to get help when a friend is struggling.
We will value the dignity in every person. We will stand up to protect our Aggie family.
Welcome back.
Okay, so how big was Old Ephraim?
Well, the hunter Frank Clark claimed Old Ephraim was 13 feet tall. His gravestone, on the other hand, in Logan Canyon, says he was 9 feet 11 inches tall. But experts at the University of Montana's Grizzly Bear Recovery Program estimate by looking at the size of the skull, he was just over 7'6", which is still larger than the average grizzly bear at 6.5 feet tall.
Now that is one big bear. That's a solid 2 feet bigger than I am.
Now this chair is from the 15th century. Royals would sit on it for outings like picnics. And we still have royalty in Utah, but it looks a little bit different. They're not sitting on these velvet chairs.
JC Caldwell joins us to tell us how pageant royalty has changed over the years.
And it's true, after doing some research and looking into the history of pageants from Special Collections, I've seen really just how much has changed, and even my own perspective has changed, considering that I originally thought pageants to be kind of like the TV show Toddlers and Tiaras. Have you guys seen that?
Not in a long time, and honestly, the only thing I remember from that is Honey Boo Boo.
Yeah, I think she was on it, as well as just a lot of other crying toddlers.
It's true, and luckily the Miss USU pageant doesn't have any crying toddlers, but I did learn what they do have and how it compares to other pageants in Utah.
Mall music sets the scene to shop for the perfect pageant dress, and it's all part of the process. But dresses are only the beginning at the Miss USU pageant.
We started planning it a couple months ago, probably. It's been on our radar the whole school year for sure.
Welcome to Miss USU 2021.
Last year's Miss USU featured contestants from all of the colleges and some special categories.
Miss Involvement, Miss Clara Alder.
But not everyone knew what to expect.
Miss USU was something that I took a chance on, and I was like, okay, I'm going to do it.
Organizers say everyone, regardless of how high the heels, enjoyed the chance to walk across the stage.
It's very entertaining and gets people involved on campus.
Pictures at Special Collections show a history of pageants at USU. Before Miss USU, it was homecoming royalty, started in 1950. This tradition was one of the longest running at the university. It transitioned to the Miss USU pageant around the turn of the century. Miss USU organizers say the name isn't the only thing that changed.
I think before it was kind of like a one-time thing where they were crowned and they have this title, but now it's much more of a role on campus than just a title, I guess.
What you see on the outside in a mirror like this one is what you may think Miss USU and other pageants in Utah are based on. But pageant girls say it's not just about the title.
Most of the time when I tell people that I miss Utah, they say, congratulations, you're so pretty. And I'm like, thank you, but that's not actually what it's about.
And the initiative that I've chosen to promote full-time as Miss Utah is Refugees Welcome.
This workshop at USU is part of Miss Utah's initiative to share the stories of refugees. She says these workshops help her when facing people who don't understand pageants.
Whenever I do encounter those stereotypes, I have to remind myself who I am and what I stand for, and remember that I see the value of the Miss Utah program, and I know that the day-to-day of my job is doing community service and social impact. And those things are very important, kind of whether or not people can recognize that.
Platforms like this one are also a part of Miss USU.
Miss USU allows you the opportunity to really have kind of the power and the energy behind creating something and doing something to impact our campus and impact the students here in a positive way.
You don't just win for the title or for the crown, it's also to do something with that.
The winner of Miss USU 2021 to Miss Clara Alder.
I honestly view Miss USU as an opportunity more than a title, and I think that that's the way that it should be viewed.
Crowning a queen was the end of homecoming royalty, but for Miss USU, it's only the beginning.
I think that's kind of the goal, is give a lot of people an opportunity to have a voice and show what they could be as a leader, and then be able to implement that throughout the next year.
Even the size of crowns has changed, from something like this in 1985 to something a little bit smaller like this. This year's USU pageant will take place in April, where the new Miss USU will be crowned.
Speaking of royalty, this table belonged to Henry VIII.
The curators here at Special Collections joke that these marks on the table are from him beheading 2 of his wives. Now, he saw the end of 5 of them, 3 of them died, 2 divorced, and the 6th saw the end of him.
And with that, that is the end of our special history edition of Cache Rendezvous. Thank you for joining us.
Have an amazing week, Cache Valley.